Welcome to Moonscapes for June the 19th, 2013. It is 8:41 p.m. We are just past sunset by, in this location by roughly, 12 or 13 minutes. So it's just starting to get a little bit of dark. You can see some blue over there on the right-hand side of the screen. We still got a little bit of daylight. Tonight we are 4 days from full moon, and I wanted to do a video and just have a little bit of fun with this one tonight. Nothing too serious. I'm looking forward to actually 24 hours from now. The Terminator will be in a real nice location, and we'll be able to get a look at some of my favorite locations. Aristarchus being one of them, with Schroeder's Valley and the Marius Hills. But tonight they'll be on the other side of this Terminator in the dark, and we will not be able to see them. So we'll just have some fun with some other objects tonight and talk about a few things. If you watched my last video, actually my last two videos, I talked about Bill Bryson's moon musing site and his Snake Bridge observations that he did from down in Texas with his excellent imaging setup that he has, and the tremendous job that he does doing imaging. I looked very carefully at the recordings after it at full size on my large TV screen, and I compared my images going back and looking at Bill's, and there is a possibility that what I talked about could have been rotated by as much as 180 degrees. In other words, there's two white points. The one that was, I believe I said something like 8 or 9 o'clock, and then there was one over at around 12 or 1 o'clock, somewhere in there. There were two little white protrusions, which Bill thought which could have been the Snake Bridge, and as we discussed, I believed it was just a low sun angle. And as I looked at my images, I could have reversed the two positions, but it doesn't matter. Both ends of the Snake Bridge just did not show up properly with high sunlight. So I still think we go back to that situation where we had very low sun angle, and the protrusions were caught by early sunrise, and they appeared to stick out farther than they really did. And then when the full sunrise got onto that crater, you could see that span really did not exist. But anyway, if you can and want to go back and take a look at it, my last two videos, I believe they were something like Moonscapes number 10 and 11, I believe are the numbers, and they refer to Bill Bryson's videos also, so you can compare the two if you'd like. Right now we're sitting on Sinus Iridium area, that C-shaped object right in the center of the screen. This is always a beautiful, fascinating area. And one of the things I wanted to look at here tonight, we did this one time before, but I was looking at it a little bit earlier before I signed on here, and I believe that we're going to get a little better look at it tonight. And it's that cape, it's that top cape of the sea. Let's get in a little closer, and let me center this up a little better. Okay, we've got it almost dead center. Let's go in a little more. Okay, you know what I'm going to do is the manual or the automatic has got this a little bright for my liking. I'm going to drop down the exposure just a hair here. Okay, there, that's a little, maybe it might be a hair too much, I'm not sure. Let's bring it up just a little bit, and I'm having, that's a real touchy. Let's see, inch it down very slightly. It really jumps on me. Try to get it back up just a little bit. Really touchy. Boy, that's really touchy tonight. I can't get that to set right where I want. I'd like it somewhere in between. All right, let's leave it there for a second. Notice the top of that C anyway. That's that object that went back in the 1700s, the early mappers. Said it looked like a woman. If you see that C object and look at the top cape, the cape that's Promontory Hercules is the name of that top of that cape. But if you look at the front part, look at the part that looks down towards the bottom, see it looks whiter than the back of it. And that's said to be the woman's face, and in the back of it there seems to be that darkish flowing hair of a woman. And I've seen drawings, like I've mentioned this before, I've seen drawings in books on the moon, and I believe, I'm not sure who was the first one to actually see this. I can't pull a name out of whether it was, I can't pull out of my back of my cardboard brain right now, but anyway, I've seen some nice drawings, and they really enhance that and make it look like a woman's head. It's that again, that top of the sea, right at the very end of it, there's a whitish part of it that looks like the woman's face, and then back behind it there's the flowing hair that's a little bit darker. It looks like I'm going to turn up the contrast here, and you can see now that brings it up a little bit better. Strange feature. A very attractive feature on the moon, though. As I said, we're going to just zoom around here and look at some different features tonight. I wanted to bring up one thing, actually about astronomy, and you know, how I got into it. You know, today's day and age, I don't know, the youngsters today have all this electronic equipment, and I don't know, they don't seem to get into the things that we used to when we were youngsters. That jumping around you see right now, I have my focus set on auto. Let me see, I might go in and reset that to manual and eliminate that jumping every once in a while. Let me reset this. Let's see, okay, that's autofocus, and bring it down, and that looks pretty good. We'll leave it there for now. Okay. But back in my day, I grew up in the 1950s, and I was an athlete, and I played a lot of sports, but I got introduced to astronomy by a friend of mine. One night we were sitting on his back porch, and I was only about 11 years old. And he handed me this little telescope, a pull-out draw-tube telescope of very high quality. And I remember pointing it at the moon and looking at it. And he had to actually show me how to hold the telescope, hold it against the post of the porch, because you were hand holding it. And I believe it was something like 15 or 20 power. So it was kind of rough to hold it on the moon and keep it steady. But when I hit the moon with that telescope, I was just totally flabbergasted. I mean, I could see craters and mountains, and some of these mountains right now that we're looking at now, I could see back then. And the idea just caught me right away, that here was another world. I mean, this wasn't just some picture in the sky. This was actually another body in space that if I could get to and walk around on, it was another world, and it just floored me. Look at this beautiful view here of Copernicus coming in on the left-hand side of the image here. And talking about left, and my last video when we talked about the Snake Bridge, I flubbed up big time when I was saying we were going to the left of that Peach Crater, Ptolemy, I believe is the name of it, to get to Rixus, the crater Rixus, where the Snake Bridge was. I should have been saying going to the right. I don't know why I did that, but I did it several times. I think you got the idea when I centered the object properly on the screen, but I kept on saying going left, and we should have been going to the right. But anyway, be as it may, that's what I should have been saying. But anyway, as a kid, I was just floored. That's not the night I would say I began amateur astronomy. It was several months later. He had his telescope set up. It was a little 3-inch telescope. Had it set on the planet Mars, and looked at Mars, and that was it. I was hooked. I was hooked for life. I was 12 years old, and I was launched on my career of amateur astronomy and serious amateur astronomy. And to this day, I just still find it fascinating. And I just wonder if the youngsters of today I don't know. Will they take the time to get into something like this, like we do, and we did back in those days? I don't know. I've been a member of Astronomical Society in Waterbury, Connecticut, for a number of years, and back in the day of Halley's Comet, we had 180 members on the books in a very active club. Right now, we're stumbling around with about half a dozen people and barely staying alive. So it's I don't know. It just seems to be a dwindling hobby, and I wish more youngsters would really get into it. Okay, let's move down here. I want to get both of these craters in at the same time. This is a very nice area of the moon at this stage. And let's drop the zoom down a little bit. There you can see down lower near roughly 7 o'clock Copernicus, and up near 11 o'clock on the top of the field a much smaller crater Kepler, and both of them have beautiful ray structures. Let me see if I can home in a little better. Let's start with Copernicus. And let's look at that structure around Copernicus. We'll zoom in a little bit and get a little closer in on. Just look at that detail. Look at that. That's phenomenal. And the cratering walls, the walls of Copernicus. Notice the terraced look to them. They are really something. They're just gorgeous views. And those little mountain ranges off to the side, they're really beautiful. And if we move over, and I gotta go the right way here, let's go over and look a little closer at our friend Kepler. Now Kepler is a much smaller crater, but look, that also has a very nice ray pattern on that. And again, I talked at length on impacts on the moon, how those rays are formed, and how the central peaks are formed also. But that's really a nice looking view. I'm doing such a laid back session tonight that I do not even have my second computer set up tonight that I do the atlas work with, where I can pick out and give you the dimensions and miles. I have a few notes here for some of these craters, but more or less just going to zoom along here and look at some of these things along the terminator. Here we're coming up to Mare Humorum. And let's get it down into the field a little bit. That circular mare there is Mare Humorum. The crater, large crater at about 5 o'clock in the walls of Mare Humorum is Cassendi. And let me see, I think I've got that here. I want to make sure. Yeah, Cassendi is 67 miles in diameter. That's a fairly good-sized crater. And if we had higher power, you could actually see some rills in the floor of that, those snake-like, valley-like structures. They probably came from back during the lava flow period on the moon and cracking. It's probably when that took place. And then notice up near, what is it, probably 10 or 11 o'clock up against the side wall of this Mare Humorum is that half-buried crater. It looks like it's halfway under the water. That is, and I've got to look, I forgot from offhand. Did I write it down? Yeah, that's Doppelmayr. And that's 39 miles in diameter. And that crater was almost buried by lava. And that's something that one of these nights we're going to get into, is the lava flows on the moon and why we have these flat mare on the moon, and then the mountainous regions where there are no mare, and what caused it. And it's very interesting. If you look at a full map of the front face of the moon, you can see all the mare, flat areas of the moon. But yet, if you see an image of the backside of the moon, there are almost no flat mare floors anywhere. It's just almost all mountainous and cratered areas. So it's almost like we have two different objects there. And why one side is so different than the other, there's been a lot of debate about that. But it's quite interesting when you take a look at that. Color. We haven't talked about color tonight. Let's see what we got here. It's we still got a little bit of blueness in the sky, so that may affect the color here a little bit. I'm at about 50%, and if we start dropping down, okay, it doesn't. It starts going to gray right away. So let's start going back the other way. There we're back at around 50, and if I go a little higher, we're getting a reddish hue. And drop it back right about there is probably the best. It looks like there's a little indication of some blueness in there, but we're zoomed in pretty good. So let's back out and let's see what we get for color. Yeah, it's kind of that rustish look, and then the blueness coming in over near the edge. But you got to be careful of that edge detail. As I said, that can get altered by aberration when we get out near the edge of the lens. There's an area that I did want to talk about, though. That one thing that I did want to. And right there, crater Tycho, that's up near 11 o'clock. See it, and you can see the ray pattern coming out of that. And, well, there's a couple of features here that we could hit tonight that I haven't really touched on before, which are always right in front of us. And one of them I'm centering right now. And I'm going to drop down, let's see, let me drop down the exposure. And I'm having a little trouble doing it. There we go. Okay, it's a little too much. And every time I do this, I'm having trouble just doing the. Let's try that. Let's try to turn the brightness up a little bit. Okay, that helps a little bit. Contrast. Let's touch that just a hair. No, I don't want to go that way. Okay. Okay. Notice Tycho up near top where the central rays are coming out of, and then come down almost to the center of the screen. There's a white circular patch. It's almost dead center in the field. It's got it almost dead center on it. That is called Halley's bright patch. That was discovered and noticed by observers long ago, back when they were mapping the moon by hand drawings. And for the longest time, it was also noted for change in color and intensities of brightness. And actually, all it's turned out to be is a bright patch on that ray from Tycho. It's just a brighter section of that ray. And it has not changed at all over time, and it does not change in color. It was just that it's so brilliant and white that different people would claim to see different things coming from it. Let's go back to auto and see if we can pull out the ray structure a little bit. We might have to move the image around a little bit to see. Maybe if I move it over here. What I'm trying to do is hold the ray structure. And where you can see it comes through that white patch, and it's just a section of whiteness on that ray. Let's try fooling around with the contrast. Maybe that might pull it out a little better. It's a little tough to. There, I've enhanced the white rays. I mean, you can see the double ray up on top going through the Mar there from Tycho. That stands out real clearly. But the one that's coming down and through that white patch is not standing out real well tonight. But that white patch is a pretty interesting spot on the moon. Now, there's one other thing I want to look at here, and I set it back on auto. Let's that contrast I want to get rid of a little bit. Okay, color intensity, let's just knock that down a little bit. Okay, and I want to go into the central area of the moon, and let's see if I can. I found it earlier before I signed on, and of course now I'm going to probably have a hard time finding it. Let me keep looking around here. Okay, I got it. Now I know where I am. I got him. I got him. I got him. I just got to get it. The center here of the screen. Yes, there we go. Okay. What I'm looking for is the crater Alphonse. And I've got it almost dead center now. Yes, dead center now. And we'll need to zoom in. We're zoomed way out. This is another very interesting feature. Zooming in. See there's actually, Ptolemaeus is that big crater washed out kind of near the bottom at 6 o'clock. And then there's another crater kind of stuck to its wall at 11 o'clock. That's Alphonse. Now, the craters themselves are very difficult to make out because of the sun angle so high. But notice in Alphonse, which is dead centered now, there are three of the dark spots that form a triangle. And we've mentioned these before. What's interesting about these is when you go into the stories of life on the moon, vegetation on the moon, these turned up very big back in Gerstein's day. We talked about Gerstein's White Cities, and we'll get a look hopefully tomorrow night if I can get out here again at one of those in the Marius Hills area. And those dark patches, let me get that back in the center again. Those dark patches were actually thought, as you can see here now, they were actually thought when they were observed at high sun angle like this, they were actually thought to be vegetation by the observers who pushed for life on the moon back then. They were thought to be groves of trees that were well placed inside that crater for growing and for the inhabitants of the so-called selenites in the moon. Of course, they did not exist. There was no selenites, and that it's not vegetation. They are just dark markings on the floor, and if you want to verify that, you just keep going back and looking at them every single month, and they look exactly the same. They are dark patches that match the dark patches out on the floor of some of these Mar areas. And for some strange reason, we have three small patches of them in that crater Alphonse. It's interesting to note that near the crater Pallas, when one night we went in looking for these cities of the moon. They were also around dark areas, right here in this area here, which is coming near the center of the screen now. There's two of them. There's one right dead center, and there's one up near 1 o'clock. Those are the areas that are also picked that were thought to possibly have life in them. And the reason they picked them, I guess, is because those dark markings reminded people of vegetation. And of course, they're not. They're just dark lava flows. I'm going to turn the color up and see if we can get some color out of them now and what we get. We're not getting much. Not getting much. If we back out a little bit, we might get a little more. I got to look over here at my time. Already, well, look at that. They're at 23 minutes. Amazing. And I'm not talking about anything particular tonight, but just zooming around the moon. We'll back out a little more. Okay. But yeah, they thought that it could be vegetation. Turned out, of course, not to be. But that's what they thought back then when they were pushing for the selenites. We talked about that one night. That one really turned out to be a real debacle. It was really an interesting part of the lunar history. Okay. Why have I gotten so dark here? It's been a tough night. Well, I haven't got auto on. Let's put the auto back on. And, okay, we're going to come up along this terminator. And, let's see, we can zoom in a little bit here. Okay. I've got a security light outside my car that keeps flipping on and off, and so far it doesn't seem to be bothering the telescope. But the moon is actually low in the sky right now, and it's not going to pass too far from that security light. So I hope it doesn't become a problem. I think we're all right. I think we're going to clear it by enough, and I'm not going to be on that much longer anyway, so we should be fine. And we're back up around the Sandy again. Let's go around the outer rim and let's see. Oh, okay, there's an interesting crater. Look at that long, elongated crater up at 11 o'clock. I'll bring that down towards the center. That is the crater Schiller. And get a little bit of zoom on that. I'm not using a lot of power tonight. I've got a 21 millimeter in there with the 3X Barlow. But we're using that 10-inch f4 again, and that f4 is a short focal-length telescope, so even when you put a 3-power Barlow in it, you're not getting an awful lot of power. That crater Schiller, that long, elongated crater, that is, it's 108 miles long, and it's 43 miles on average across the shorter distance. Actually, I believe that crater has been determined to actually be two craters. One crater formed, and then at some time in lunar history, another large impact occurred, wiping out the wall that would have actually divided to two craters, and it makes it appear as one crater. I believe I did read that somewhere. I'm not certain, not 100% certain about that, but that is a possibility. Trying to find. There's Tycho. Yeah, there's Clavius. Clavius, as big as Clavius is, like 157 miles in diameter. When it gets to be a near full moon, and it starts to become a little more difficult to find. There it is. It's dead center now. You can see the prominent walls in the floor of Clavius. Let me try some contrast maneuvers here. Helps a little bit. Notice that white line that runs through the left-hand side of Clavius. That is that's ejecta pattern from Tycho. That's one of the ones that continues on for hundreds of miles up and over the back side of the moon. Okay, we'll go along this, and we get out here. We're gonna get into the real high sun angles, and we're not gonna get an awful lot over here. I'm gonna shut off the auto exposure and drop it, and see if we can. I don't want to do that with the gain. Let's see if I can increase contrast. There's some contrast increase. Oh, the brightness too. There's a little bit. Okay, now we got it so we can see a little detail in these areas along the edge of the moon. The sun angle is very, very high though here, so you're not going to see the detail like we do along the Terminator. All those little tiny white spots are impact areas. And the white ones, the real bright white ones, tend to be the younger. They tend to be not as old. And we got some early fireworks going for the 4th of July. Here's a nice ejecta pattern here on the edge of the moon. I don't have my Lunar Atlas out, or I would try to check those out and find out what they're called. And I keep on. These buttons are backwards. Okay, we're coming down. And here we are. We're working up on our way. There's Mare Cressum. Mare Cressum. With our crater Proculus with that tremendous spray pattern all off on the one side. Put the auto back on. No, that does not work here. We can't do that when we're near the edge of the moon. It doesn't like to confuses the camera when we get too close to the edge. So we got to go back to manual. And here we go. Come down and around. We don't have a lot of detail here. Let's see. Okay. Okay, there's here. This will be interesting. Here we're setting on Plato. You can see that flat-floored crater Plato. And it's hard to see, but right dead center is the Alpine Valley. That's that gouge that goes through the Apennine Mountains and is very, very prominent at low sun angles. But look at how it almost disappears during a high sun angle. And that's one of the things that I mentioned back with that situation with Bill Bryson and his Snake Bridge. Sun angle makes all the difference. It can change what an object looks like by an awful lot. You have to really look hard to actually find that Alpine Valley tonight. It's there, and once you spot it, it's obvious, but you could easily go right by it and not even see it. Okay, that's Mare Frigoris. There's Plato, and then on the right side of Plato, running almost now diagonally through the center of the screen, is Mare Frigoris. And that large crater over right about 1 o'clock, right on the terminator. I had located and found the name of that earlier, and I've got to go back and see if I can refine that again. Let's see, I'm not sure. No, that's not Bond. It's on the other side of... now, I got to remember, I'm working with a map here that's now reversed. So it makes a little bit difficult. I'm working with a paper map here. That's Herschel. Yeah, okay, that's right. Herschel, the crater Herschel. If that were more centered on the moon's disk, that would be a brilliant structure, but we're getting a very foreshortened look at it here, and we can't really see it as well, but it's still a very, very impressive object. And there, now we go look it up right up in the upper left-hand corner, the blue in the Mare floor there. It's finally starting to. There's some nice blue color in here, right near our C-shaped structure and Our Lady's head. Let's back out, and we're at 32 minutes. I've got to cut this off. We're already getting over what I wanted to do tonight. There's some nice color there. And bring it down. I don't know why we're getting so much of that red rust. As I say, sometimes if you don't get the camera situated in there as square as you'd like, you do get a little false coloring. That could be the case tonight, about 100% certain, but there is some redness to that and the blue on the outside. Anyways, well, tomorrow night, hopefully I'll get another video out. I'm not sure. As I've mentioned before, I am having some severe back problems and having some more problems than I'd like. I tried to go light tonight and just set up the bare basics to do this so I could save myself for tomorrow, because I would really like to get a video of the Marius Hills area. Hopefully the weather looks like it's going to be good, and if my body cooperates, I'll get another one then. If not, I'm not sure when I'll get the next video out, because we're getting close to full moon. But with a little luck, we'll get one out. We'll get one of the Marius Hills, and we'll see what we can do with that tomorrow night with a little bit of luck. So again, guys, that's a little tour of the moon. We're just taking a look at a few objects for fun, nothing serious. And I'm going to sign off with that tonight and say good health, guys, clear skies, and hopefully see you tomorrow night, as long as my body can handle it again. See you later, guys.